Hi everyone, today we're going to work on creating a clay donut or a ceramic donut after it goes through the kiln. And so the first step that I'm going to do, I'm going to set aside this finished one. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some clay and I'm going to start working it in my hands. The goal is to get out any imperfections, bubbles. You can wedge your clay, but I had previously already wedged my clay, and so I know it's going to be pretty much free from bubbles, okay? And so once I have my clay all kind of pushed and hit together, I'm going to form it into this really kind of super thick hamburger patty shape, okay? It's really thick. This is probably a good 1.5 inches thick by, I don't know, 4.5 inches across. All right, so once I have this, I'm gonna let this sit aside or set out to dry out a little bit, maybe an hour or two. If you don't have an hour or two to let it sit and dry out, then I would take the blow dryer and blow dry it. So this one is a little bit stiffer, okay? And once I have blow dried it and it's a little bit stiffer, I'm gonna take some kind of round device. I'm just using a pen because that's what I had available. And I'm going to poke it through in the center. I'm going to poke it all the way through. Once it's all the way through, I'm going to start working it around and around a little bit wider. I want it wide enough so I can actually get my finger in that side. Okay, so there's one. Flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing from the other side. You can see that the clay is still really soft on the inside, so when I say I blow dried it, I only blow dried it for maybe 5 minutes or so. So the inside of the clay is still pretty soft, very, very malleable. All right, so once I have that, I'm going to take a few minutes here and kind of pull this clay out on both sides. It doesn't have to be perfect right now because we are going to take time to clean this up closer to the end. Okay, so I've got my holes and it goes all the way through. Next thing I'm going to do is going to take my fettling knife, and very much like you would do on a bagel, you're going to cut through your donut. And this is why it's very important to make sure that you have blow dried your donut a bit first, because if your donut is too soft, it will become rather deformed in this process. So once you've got it cut, you want to try and peel it all the way apart. Looks like I didn't go all the way through yet. Okay, now I've got it apart. Okay, and so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to take some kind of a loop tool and I'm going to begin to carve out the inside of my donut halves. And so I'm going to be carefully just removing this excess clay, because we cannot fire a solid donut in the kiln. I just don't want to run the risk of any types of explosions in the kiln. And typically at school, we don't have time to sit and wait for a really thick project to completely dry out. It just takes too long for thick projects to dry out. So I take my time. And this doesn't have to be beautiful on the inside because you're never going to see it. But you want to make sure you've gone far enough but you don't want to go too far and make it too thin. That's pretty good. Like I said, it doesn't have to be pretty. It just needs to be thinner. All right, so there's one side. I'm going to do the other side. All right, so I've got all of this excess clay that I removed from the inside of the donut. Now I'm going to take the donut over to my blow dryer and I'm going to blow dry it for a few minutes and then I'll be back. All right, I'm back from blow drying. So now that I have blow dried it, it is just a little bit stiffer. I'm going to take the time and I'm actually going to press this out just a little bit to make sure I don't have any thin areas, and I can tell with my fingers that this is really thin. I'm gonna just take a little extra blob of clay, add that back in there because it just got a little bit too thin and I didn't really feel it until I was blow drying it. So just want to add that back in, and I don't have to slip and score that because that clay is still really soft and the project in general is pretty soft still. All right, got that side. Work on this side as well. Thinning it out just a smidgen. Now as I'm pinching this together, it's actually making my donut just a little bit bigger, and I'm okay with that. There's nothing wrong with a bigger donut. All right, next thing I'm going to do, if I have a serrated metal rib like this, I can simply use that to score the sides of the donut. All right, so I'm scoring this all up. If I don't have a serrated metal rib, you can use something like a needle tool to score the entire thing. So just create score marks so that you're roughing up the surface, because we're going to now apply some slip. So I've got my slip, and I'm going to apply this all the way around. And I'm going to do it on both sides, making sure I've got good contact. All right, so there is my slip. Now I'm going to take both of these sections and put them together. So I'm going to press these together. Now I've effectively trapped a big air bubble inside there. So hopefully that will help keep the donut inflated, if you will, nice and full. Now I'm going to take whatever my favorite wood tool is, or plastic modeling tool, it really doesn't matter, and I'm going to start blending my sides together. So blending from one way, or one side into the other. And this is kind of where I'd say it's going to get messy before it gets clean. So you don't have to worry about keeping it nice and neat just yet, because we'll tidy it up here in a few minutes. Your goal is just to get them joined together. All right, once I have the sides joined together, next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take my smooth metal rib. Now, if I don't have a smooth metal rib, I can use something like a spoon, or if you have a wooden tool that's got a flat edge, that will work. Here's another wooden tool with a flatter edge, so you can use this tool to kind of scrape together. That will work just fine. But I'm going to use this metal rib to continue to smooth out the edges together, blending it, making my two pieces of donut combined so that I've got just one unified whole donut. Gosh, the more I talk about donuts, the more I'm getting hungry for a donut. It sounds pretty good right now. So once I've gone one direction, I'm going to come back and and go the other. Really making sure that that donut, that seam rather, is solid. All right, so once I've got that far, you can see it's really just kind of now a matter of smoothing it up. And I'm not going to be using, a lot of students seem to think that, well, I'm just going to use a sponge. Well, the problem is you took all that time to allow this project to kind of stiffen up by either blow drying it or letting it sit out. But if you now take a sponge to this, you're just going to undo all that process. So don't put water on it at this point. You're just going to use the best tools you have, and that would be primarily your fingers. And I'm just using my thumb to smooth this, get the worst of the wrinkles, the imperfections out. Doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to be putting some icing on my donut here in a minute. So you want to do top and bottom. Okay, so that's pretty good. You can see my hole isn't quite exactly in the center, but not the end of the world. I am also going to put my pencil or my pen back in to try and get that blended together. Where I joined the two. It looks like I got some ink on my donut. All right, so now at this point, I'm ready for some icing. And so I'm going to set this aside. And now remember all the clay I took out of the middle of my donut? I'm going to work my clay together in my hand. And I'm going to create a size, pretty much like a golf ball, approximately. Once I have that, then I'm going to start smashing that clay out really thin. Okay, so that's a big old patty. So I'm going to drape it on my donut now and let it just kind of fall over where it wants to go. Now, if your clay is super soft like mine is, you may not worry about slipping and scoring. Or if you're nervous it's not going to stay, then by all means, oops, mine just ripped. I can fix that. If you're nervous that it's not going to stay, then by all means, get out your serrated metal rib. Better be safe than sorry, right? I don't like to take chances. And so we'll do the not pretty side on here. We'll score this all up. I'm gonna get out our slip again. And get that slip on the donut. And this time I'm only just going to put it on the donut. I'm going to take my icing, press it on, and now I'm going to work on getting it down the side. Now if you want to take the time to carve out the icing so it has undulating curves and goes up and down, that's fine. I'm not going to take the time to do that. Some icing drips differently than others. I'm just going to let mine be. Okay, so there's some icing kind of dripping off to the side. And so the last thing you would do before you put your icing or any other details, see if you can find where that hole was in the center of your donut. Sometimes, depending on where you get your donuts from, sometimes the icing covers the entire top of the donut. Sometimes you can still see the hole in the middle. I like to still be able to see the hole, so I'm going to put it back in. And my clay is still really soft, almost too soft to kind of smooth this all out, but we can still smooth a little bit later. I'm going to set this aside now because I want to make some icing, different type of icing. Now I'm going to make a coil. Nice and skinny. Because eventually I'll paint my donut or glaze it. I actually think I'm going to paint it. And maybe I have chocolate icing with a drizzle of pink icing or something like that. And this is going to be my drizzle. So I would then slip and score this to go right on the top of my donut. Kind of finish it out like that, or have it drip down the side, or however you want to finish it out. Okay, that's up to you, but I would slip and score that. And then I've had students ask me, well, how do I make sprinkles? So you can make little sprinkles, but keep in mind you're going to have to slip and score them on there. So that's fine to do, but sometimes if your clay is too soft, it's kind of a pain to slip and score everything. I like to wait until the sprinkles have stiffened up a little bit before I slip and score them on to my donut. But you get the idea. These are kind of big sprinkles, but they're maybe a little too big, but that's okay. But again, you don't want to just lay them on there because they will not stick through the kiln firing. They have to be slipped and scored. All right, so that's kind of it on the donut. Once it stiffens up a little bit, you would take the time to really fine detail it, get it all smoothed out just the way you want. Get more sprinkles on there if you want. But make sure you actually really take the time to finish it up and have it look like a real donut. Hope you like it. Good luck with making your own donut. Enjoy the process, and we'll see you next time.